Eleanor Whitfield rarely had evenings free, but tonight was one of them, and she intended to spend it exactly the way her 10-year-old son, Theo, had requested: dinner at Miller's Diner, the unassuming little restaurant 3 blocks from their penthouse that Theo insisted made the best pancakes in the entire world, even for dinner. Eleanor, CEO of Whitfield Capital and one of the wealthiest women in the city, found something quietly comforting about the diner's chipped booths and laminated menus. It was one of the few places where nobody recognized her, where she was simply Theo's mom instead of a name attached to billion-dollar headlines. They were seated in their usual booth near the window when Eleanor noticed him, a man 2 tables away, sitting with a young girl who looked about 5 years old. The man wore a work uniform with a faded logo, his eyes carrying the particular exhaustion of someone who'd been on his feet since sunrise. The little girl was carefully counting coins from a small purse, arranging them into neat stacks on the table. "Daddy, I have $4, the girl said proudly. "Is that enough for pancakes?" The man's smile was warm, but Eleanor caught the flicker of tension behind it. "Almost, sweetheart. Let's see what we can get with that." Eleanor watched, unnoticed, as the waitress approached and the man quietly asked about the cheapest items on the menu, doing careful math under his breath, clearly trying to stretch whatever budget he had to make sure his daughter didn't feel the strain of it. "Mom," Theo whispered, following her gaze. "Why does that girl look worried about money for pancakes?" Eleanor considered her answer carefully. Theo had grown up with more privilege than he understood, and moments like these were opportunities she didn't take lightly. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "grown-ups have to make really hard choices about money, even for small things like pancakes. Not everyone has what we have." Theo frowned, processing this. "That's not fair." "No," Eleanor agreed. "It isn't." She could have simply paid for the table's meal quietly and left, the way she'd done for strangers before, sliding money to the waitress without a word. It was an easy, invisible kindness, one that asked nothing of her beyond the transaction itself. But something about the man's quiet dignity, the way he never once let his daughter see him worry, the careful way he counted his own resources without a trace of self-pity, made Eleanor pause. "Excuse me," she said, walking over to their table with Theo trailing curiously behind her. "I'm sorry to interrupt. My son noticed your daughter counting her coins, and he had a question he wanted to ask her, if that's all right." The man looked up, surprised and slightly guarded. "Sure, that's fine." Theo, prompted gently by his mother, turned to the little girl. "What's your name?" "Ruby," she said shyly. "I'm Theo. Are you having pancakes too? They're really good here." Ruby nodded enthusiastically, her earlier worry momentarily forgotten in the simple joy of talking to another kid. As the children chatted, Eleanor turned to the father. "I'm Eleanor," she said, extending her hand. "I hope you don't mind the interruption." "Daniel," he replied, shaking her hand cautiously. "Not at all. Ruby doesn't usually warm up to strangers that fast. Theo has that effect on people." Eleanor hesitated, then decided to simply be direct, something she rarely allowed herself outside of boardrooms. "I noticed you counting things carefully. I don't mean to overstep, but is everything all right?" Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, pride visibly wrestling with honesty. "We're managing. It's been a tight month, that's all. Car trouble ate into things I wasn't expecting." "What do you do?" Eleanor asked. "I'm a maintenance technician. Mostly HVAC and electrical work for commercial buildings." He shrugged. "It's steady work usually. Just a rough patch." Eleanor nodded slowly, an idea forming with the same clarity she usually reserved for business decisions worth millions. "Whitfield Capital owns several commercial properties downtown," she said. "Our facilities management contract is up for renewal next month, and frankly, the current vendor has been unreliable. Would you be interested in submitting a proposal? Steady, guaranteed hours, full benefits." Daniel blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Hi, that's generous of you to mention, but I run a small operation. I'm not sure I could compete with bigger firms for a contract like that." "I'm not asking you to compete," Eleanor said simply. I'm asking because I've watched you handle a hard month with more grace than most executives I know handle a bad quarter. That matters more to me than the size of your company. Dinner that night stretched longer than either of them expected. Pancakes for the kids, coffee for the adults, and a conversation that moved easily from business logistics to the simple, universal exhaustion of raising children alone. Daniel's wife had passed away when Ruby was 2, and in the years since, he built a small, steady life around his daughter, one careful decision at a time. Eleanor recognized something in him she rarely saw in the boardroom she occupied, a man whose integrity wasn't for show, who worked hard not for recognition but simply because his daughter deserved a stable life. By the time they left the diner, Ruby and Theo were exchanging phone numbers scrawled by their parents on napkins, already planning another dinner together. And Daniel walked out with more than a full stomach. He walked out with genuine opportunity, offered not out of pity, but respect. Weeks later, Daniel's small company secured the maintenance contract, expanding just enough to hire 2 additional technicians and finally breathe easier at the end of each month. Eleanor never treated the arrangement as charity, and Daniel never let her. It was simply 2 people, from very different worlds, recognizing something valuable in each other over a shared plate of pancakes. Sometimes, the most unbelievable moments in life don't come from grand gestures or fairy tale coincidences. Sometimes they come from a billionaire choosing to really see the people around her, and a single dad who never stopped believing that dignity, not money, was what truly mattered.